Hello, everybody. Welcome to another Comic Source Comic Boom collaboration. Time for your DC Spotlight for the week of April 16th, 2025. Got 11 books we're going to talk about this week. Friday's Superman Day, so there's going to be some other titles that are going to be coming out later this week as well. We'll mention those. But yeah, 11 books that we're going to talk about. Apologies for not getting the Indie Spotlight out. Like we've missed the last 2 weeks. It's totally on me. Things have been busy, and I just haven't wanted to stay up late to do it.
Yeah.
But hopefully we'll get back on track with that this week. It is a
Well, I'm not
smaller
gonna. I'm
indie
not.
week.
Jace, I'm not gonna let you take full blame for that. I mean, we both. I mean, I could jump. I could step up to the plate too, but we're both busy. But it's all good. I can't. I can't. I gotta. That's
Yeah,
we're a
fair.
team, my
Yeah,
friend.
fair enough. And that being said, like I've read all the DC books this week, but I haven't even read the indie stuff this week yet. But yeah, I will, and I'll get out, and I'm gonna try to go back and fill in those weeks that I missed as well. But partly it's because I've had other comic source stuff to do, like writing articles and reading books for other interviews for people, and so yeah, it's been a challenge, but at least we haven't missed the DC spotlights, which I know everybody's been highly anticipating, and it gets a lot of support. We really appreciated that. We really appreciate that. Most people check it out on Rocky's channel, Comic Space Boom exclamation point over on YouTube. Once you're there, like, comment, subscribe. Make sure you ring that notification bell, which again we really appreciate the support. But it is also available audio only on the Comic Source YouTube, on the Comic Source podcast feed, which you can find wherever you get your podcast, whatever platform or app you use. Just do a search for the Comic Source and subscribe. And then those other interviews and other content that I've mentioned comes out on the Comic Source YouTube channel. Just do a search for the Comic Source on YouTube. Again, like, comment, subscribe, ring that notification bell. And the Comic Source articles I mentioned that come out on the Comic Source website as well as LRM Online. And if you're following us on social media, the Comic Source, I always tweet out all that stuff. Or put it on Instagram or Blue Sky or whatever, right? So if you go to the Comic Source YouTube channel, you can get the link tree, follow us on all the social medias. I had a really brief interview with Jorge Jimenez. He only had time for like 5 questions, and even 2 of those got combined into one. But it was great. It was great to just quickly pick his brain on his love of Superman, on getting to do the art for the Summer of Superman special, which was amazing. So that was a lot of fun. And then you may have seen some articles come out about the Summer of Superman with Joshua Williamson and Mark Waid and Dan Slott, who are the 3 writers for the Summer of Superman special, who also handle the 3 Superman titles, right? You've got Mark Waid on Action, you've got Joshua Williamson on Superman, and then Dan Slott on the upcoming Superman Unlimited monthly title that's coming out. So there were a few of us that got to sit down and chat with them and ask them a bunch of questions. And a lot of those articles have come out. I have not put my article out yet. And the reason for that is because there's some spoiler stuff that was brought up in the chat. And the guys, Mark Waid and Dan Slott specifically, were they were like, oh, don't spoil that part. Don't spoil that part. And so some of the other articles that have come out, I noticed that, and all respect to the other journalists, I guess we'd say, that were there, they fully did that. Like, they didn't talk about the thing that Dan didn't want them to talk about, which hey, great, I would have done the same thing, and that was the choice I had to make. It's like, this is something that's really exciting to me, and I want to mention it in my article. But that means I'm not going to drop it on Monday when everybody else does. I'm not going to drop it till Wednesday. So, because that's when the Summer of Superman special book comes out. That's when this episode comes out. So we'll be talking about it for sure at the end of the Summer of Superman special, the kind of spoilery part of it. So anyway, all that to be said, I thought this was an okay week. Nothing blew me away, but nothing was terrible either. It was really interesting. Like, 11 books. My top 3 were a little difficult to choose between. Like, I knew these were my top 3, but I wasn't sure where everything fell. Like, what was 1, what was 2, what was 3, and 4, 5, and 6 again is like that second tier. Again, like, I knew for sure, okay, this is my 4, 5, and 6. but I'm not sure what should be 4, what should be 5, what should be 6. I mean, typically we do like our top 5. Those are the books that we talk about. And if something's outside of our top 5, we don't, spend as much time on it. But I was like,
Yeah,
man, I really want to talk about 4, 5, and 6. So it was really tough for me. And then 7 through 11 also, it was obvious that these were the ranks. So it was like there's 3 tiers this week. Um, like
it's
probably really good, above average, and then probably those last 4 are kind of average for me.
yeah.
But nothing was bad.
That's
So
interesting. It's
yeah, kind of a
it's interesting that you
kind of an
say that
interesting week.
because I
I
had a
had a really
slightly
hard,
different
especially with
experience.
4. Sorry, Rocky, especially with 4, 5, and 6. Man, I went back like between 4, 5, and 6, and I re-ranked them several times because I was like, man, which one is 6? Like, yeah, it was really tough. Anyway, what were you gonna say? What are your thoughts on the week?
No, my top five were all like, if I was to rate them between out of 10, all of them, if I was given my top five comics that I chose this week, all I would give them all a 7 to a 7.5 score out of 10. They were all very close, and I had a really hard time saying, which, you know, ranking them really. I mean, it's a solid week. It's a solid week for me. I can't say anything really blew me away that stood out, but then it's such a solid week. That's not a bad problem to have for DC. It's still like DC is still doing really well. And I do want to give a shout out to DC. I know we don't the sales numbers we don't get aren't particularly accurate anymore, as they at least not as much as they used to be, according to conventional wisdom. But nonetheless, congratulations to DC Comics and the powers that be at DC. The absolute titles are eating up the charts. They're doing really well. Wish to see all the success. It's really nice to see it. Them at the top of their game because Marvel usually dominates, and so as a DC lover, it's really great to see. So kudos to DC, and I hope them continued success with their absolute lines, and hopefully some of the mainstream titles will come up in sales as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. There's been some talk of it in social media because the numbers that we do have, and these numbers, again, it's not a complete picture, right? Because the numbers used to come from Diamond. Diamond was the only distributor, so you knew, Diamond was giving us full sales, and we knew. Now it's like the stores that use certain comic book point of sale systems will give us their data, but not every store uses a point of sale system. Even those, so you're getting an incomplete picture because it's not every store. Even those that use point of sale system, they don't all use the same one. So again, we're getting limited data. Um, but it is the only information we have, and it does show trends more than anything. Um, but last week, on the stores that use, or the last information we got for last month, for the stores that use Comic Hub, which is the biggest, most widespread used point of sale system for comic books retailers, that like DC had like the top 6 titles, and I think like 6 out of the top 10 or something like that, which is really great, and they're kicking Marvel's butt. But even the Marvel titles that are on there are the Ultimate line, and it's interesting, right? Because what it's doing, or what to me what it's saying is, it's reducing the barriers of entry because people can jump on the absolute titles a little easier in their minds. They can jump on the absolute titles or the ultimate titles without going
Yeah,
back and feeling like they've missed out on a ton of continuity. And that's interesting because it's all perception, right? Like we've actually I've actually had this conversation with creators both recently at WonderCon and in the aforementioned conversation I had with Dan Slott and Joshua Williamson and Mark Waid, because somebody asked the question, well, if you're telling somebody who's never read a Superman comic what to pick up, what to read first, right? Is it All Star Superman? Is it Superman for all seasons? And they're like, the answer is whatever Superman comic catches your eye, because, and Rocky knows this, when we started reading, it was a different era. It wasn't a situation where every 6 months there was a new number one for your favorite character. You just jumped in, on Detective Comics 413 or Superman number 367 or Action Comics number 522. It didn't matter. You jumped in, and yes, there were plot threads that were continuing, but you just jumped in and you started reading, and eventually you caught on, and eventually those plots that maybe you didn't start with ended, and new plots started, and eventually you were at a point where, yeah, you just kind of understood what was going on. So I know that's not the way people consume content nowadays. Everything is they want it bingeable and they want it in bite-sized pieces and whatever. And I get that. And it could be that you're going to read a comic and there's going to be references to something that you don't know about or haven't heard of before. I at least used to take those as, hey, that's just another reason to go back and read that book, right? Like you'd get a little editor's note. See,
Yeah.
you're reading Action Comics and you get a little editor's note because something's mentioned, and it would be like, see Batman 367. And then it would just make me want to go read Batman 367. And now, like as a reader, as a new reader, you have so much more ability to learn about past events with things like Wikipedia and Google's internet searches and what have you. So I don't know. I kind of look at it as an excuse when people say, "Oh, I don't want to read this because I don't understand or whatever." But regardless of if I think that's the case or not, I think what these numbers are showing us, the fact that the best-selling books are absolute titles and ultimate titles, is that people do want to be reading books, and they want to read books where they feel like they can get in on the ground floor. And again, I get that. That's the reason, like when CrossGen started in, was it 1998? I think it was that CrossGen started. Like
Yeah.
or maybe it was the year 2000. And anyway, it doesn't matter. The point is that when CrossGen started, I was like, hey, this is a new Superman universe, or a new superhero universe, and I can get in on the ground floor, and I'm going to read everything so I don't miss anything, and I'll feel like I'm a big part of this universe. And I think that's what people are feeling with the
Yeah.
Ultimate line at Marvel and with the Absolute line at DC.
Yeah.
So
Well, I felt
uh,
that way too because I had stopped collecting Marvel and I jumped back into Marvel with the Ultimate line because I liked an adult Peter Parker. It was my Peter Parker who was married, and I jumped in on the Ultimate line because I perceived it as more accessible, and it is, quite frankly, and I'm enjoying it. So I'm behind in my readings, but I'm enjoying it.
yeah, and the big name creators, the quality creators that Marvel does have, it does seem like they're on that line, on the
Yeah.
Ultimate line, as opposed to the regular line. Um, because
Yeah.
yeah, the other part of this is Marvel has not been, and this is a
Yeah.
conversation that's come up many times recently. I've had with other creators and other fans that Marvel's just not doing it for them anymore. So
Yeah.
anyway, one other thing that I want to mention before we dive into the books, I said that I would look up that New Adventures of Superman story that we referenced last week, and I did look it up. And then I forgot to say what it was, and then I was going to put it in the comments section of the YouTube video, and I forgot. So anybody that's curious and wants to read that story where Superman's costume is mostly yellow, and so he's reflecting the yellow sunlight and he's not as powerful, it's New Adventures of Superman 18. If you want to go and check it out, and I do recommend it. So, all right, all that out of the way, let's go ahead and dive into the books. First book that we're going to talk about today is Absolute Flash #2 from writer Jeff Lemire. Nick Robles handles the art, Adriana Lucas on colors, Tom Napolitano on letters. And it's interesting because Nick handled the colors on his own in the first issue, but now he's got Adriana Lucas, who's a fantastic color artist in his own right, handling it. This comes in my top 3. I really enjoyed it. We are already seeing a Wally West that, even though he's new to these powers and these abilities, we're already seeing him able to sort of travel through time. Unfortunately, he can't control it right now. So it's almost like there's 3 different time zones or time periods in this issue. But again, we see him jumping around, not able to control it, and he thinks it's something wrong with him. It's definitely leaning into the idea of him having anxiety. That's very well illustrated with his sort of what's called in psychology, the clinical term is racing thoughts, where his thoughts are coming at him so fast he can't even he doesn't have time to really sort of process the thoughts that are linked to emotions, because his emotions are out of control as well. And between that and having the rogues who really get a chance to shine in this issue as well, both in terms of visually and their personalities are starting to be fleshed out. And it's interesting because it's sort of like their personalities that you've become used to, but just dialed up a little bit. Like Captain Cold always wants to be the boss. Here, it's clear that there's a level of respect, because again, they are an arm of the U.S. military. There's a level of respect that maybe the Captain Cold we know as the leader of the Rogues in the regular universe, there's a level of respect he doesn't necessarily get. They follow him because he seems to know what he's doing, but it's more of a begrudged respect. Whereas here, it definitely seems like it's a little bit more of respect for him. So that's interesting. The art is fantastic, and yeah, bad things are happening for Flash here for sure. So I thought the art was fantastic. I love the feel of the book that Jeff Lemire is giving us, and yeah, I was just really impressed. This was a no doubt top three for me. And I also really enjoyed the end when we get our first glimpse of Gorilla Grodd, who's not at all what you think he'll be in this universe. So, what are your thoughts about it, Rocky?
I thought it was good. I thought it was solid. It didn't now when I say it didn't make my top five. That's not by any means. It just never. I just thought it was a little bit. I don't know. I guess for me, it does feel it's fun. It's a fun comic, and you're right. It's excellently drawn. I like the time travel aspect of it, where he's hopping into three different periods of time. I'm curious about that. I guess it just doesn't really feel. I just it just never really really had a huge impact on me this week, quite frankly. But it's good. It's a good story. I'm curious about Wally West. I'm already I'm I already like I like you. You talked about the anxiety aspect of it, about how he's an extremely insecure kid, and how does that play into someone who's got these super speed thoughts? And it's like, can you imagine insecurity on speed dial? I mean, literally. And how does he process that? It's I'm really curious to see how Jeff Lemire is going to maybe script that moving forward, because this Wally West really does seem to have his issues. I'm really curious as well. It was hinted at last issue that maybe Barry Allen is dead, but maybe he isn't, because Wally West, if he has a way to sort of go in and out through different periods of time within a few days of each other, maybe Barry Allen is not dead. Maybe he won't actually be killed, or if he was, maybe there's a way. Can Wally West actually affect time? Can he, in effect, change time if he's going in and out, because he seemed to go into the past and talk to Barry, and then he's in the present again, talking interacting with the Rogues, and then interacting, and then seeing his mother when she was alive. And so, I mean, it's multiple periods of time here that are in play. And it's particularly it's interesting. I'm really curious as to where it's going with this. Exactly what is the nature of Wally West powers? I don't really know. He manages to escape the Golden Glider. He humbled Golden Glider because she's faster than her. She prided herself on being the fastest there is. She's nothing compared to the Flash. No surprise there, I suppose, but it's a surprise to her. Uh, he manages to escape out of some sort of construct that was shaped around him by one of the Rogues. I'm not even sure which one did it, but in any event, whatever powers that this Gorilla Grodd has, uh, it it's going to be interesting. We should note that in issue one, this monkey, who I didn't know was we didn't know was Gorilla Grodd, in issue one, the monkey seemed, I thought, befriended Wally when Wally first was going through the underground science lab with Barry Allen. I thought the monkey sort of befriended him, and so it might be interesting. Maybe this Gorilla Grodd actually likes Wally West. I don't know, or maybe there's some sort of a bond there. Who knows? But I do know that I am curious as to where this is headed moving forward. And yeah, uh, pretty good overall.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, Gorilla Grodd is a little monkey. Now it's an interesting take for sure, right? Because we know Gorilla Grodd, and we're going to talk about Gorilla Grodd more when we get to World's Finest here in a minute. And the juxtaposition, right? Gorilla Grodd is this giant, sort of silverback gorilla who's physically very strong, but he always uses his mind. He manipulates people. He uses the powers of his mind. That's really where his strength comes from. But yeah, he could also sort of go toe to toe with Superman in a way physically. But to lean into that, I mean, and I love especially the menace of how he looks when you just see his eyes and then he pops out and it's like this cute little monkey. So yeah, really interesting take from Jeff Lemire. Love it. All right, up next, this one makes my top three. And it it kicks off the Summer of Superman in a lot of ways. It's called The Past, the Present, the Future. It is Summer of Superman special number one. There's three different chapters. The first is written by Mark Waid, second by Dan Slott, third by Joshua Williamson. The art is by Jorge Jimenez. This has gotten a lot of play. I think it is very important if you want to understand kind of the beginnings of the events of the Summer of Superman as they're going to take place within the comics. We do get to see a very young Superboy here on the day that he decides he's going to tell Lana Lang his secret, and then doesn't, because he gets a glimpse of himself with Lois as a husband and a father, with John Kent there as well in the future. But we also lean into the idea of Legion of Superheroes, and Superman mentions, or Superboy mentions, that the Legion have put a block in, so whenever he comes back to his time, the thoughts are erased, or the memories are erased, rather, so he doesn't inadvertently affect the future. And so he comes back to the present. He doesn't tell Lana because he has a weird feeling it's because of what he just saw. But the other thing that's interesting is that we're getting the marriage of John Henry Irons and Lana Lang here, which is really cool, because for the longest time, DC characters weren't allowed to marry because there was a thought that it would sort of date them in a way, which I totally understand the sentiment. I don't agree with it in terms of, you want your characters to evolve at some point. But I also understand that these are, characters that are worth billions of dollars as an intellectual property. So you don't want them to change too much. And then Joshua Williamson sort of handles the final chapter where the marriage actually takes place. And then we get a glimpse of why this is all happening. Because throughout the three stories, Validus has been traveling through time, showing up at various times in Smallville, and Superman's had to battle him. And again, reasons for Validus being chosen. You guys really got to go and check out the interview that I had that, again, drops today with Josh and Dan and Mark, because they talk about why Validus and all that. And they talk a lot about leveling up the villains. And yeah, it's just a great conversation. But one of the things that's mentioned is this idea that keeps coming back time and time again, one of the most beloved properties of DC Comics, which is the Legion of Superheroes.
Yes, yes. I love it.
Yeah. And I think we're getting, back in the day, you used to get in TV shows what was called a backdoor pilot. And what it would be is basically guest stars that would show up in an established show that were going to get their own show. And the way that they would have their pilot would be guest starring on another show, right? Like, so you'd have a couple of, and I'm just throwing this out there, I don't think this actually happened, but you'd have like a couple of female detectives team up with Simon and Simon, right, to solve a case. And that would be what was called a backdoor pilot. And then those two female detectives would get their own show. And so they'd show up on a popular show first to get people interested in the characters and their story. And then hopefully people would go and show up for their pilot, and then their series and what have you. I sort of think that's what this evil Legion of Superheroes that we're getting, this absolute universe version of Legion of Superheroes that we're getting, it's sort of a backdoor pilot. It's a way to lead into the true main universe Legion of Superheroes. Because the other thing we're getting, and you can see this in the recent episode that I posted, which is the WonderCon files. It's the conversation, it's the panel that Mark Waid and Dan Slott had at WonderCon a few weeks ago, along with Marie Javins. And they talk about Legion of Superheroes coming back, and Mark Waid talks about what version it'll be and all that. So that's what I sort of feel like this absolute Legion of Superheroes is, that we saw at the end of the story for the All-In special, right? Like, remember that issue that you could read frontwards or backwards? And when you got to that middle double-page spread of this evil Legion of Superheroes. So what we find at the end, and it's, to me, as much as I love the feeling, because it is a preview of what's to come, of the regular, all three chapters of the regular stories that are in this Summer of Superman special, maybe the most impactful, most important, is the epilogue, where we find out that Validus, yes, he was running through time. The way he was able to do that was somehow through the machinations of Booster Gold. And what Booster was hoping was that Superman would investigate, he would follow Validus, and it would in some way lead him back to Booster. so that Superman could discover that there is an evil version of the Legion of Superheroes and they're messing with time in some way. Because if you're watching this on YouTube, there's the spoiler, there's the big reveal. Booster Gold chained up. Last time we saw him, he was in that Absolute Universe on a building with the evil Legion of Superheroes descending down upon him. Now we see he's captured. They're torturing him in some way. So what does this have to do with the Absolute Evil Legion? How does that lead into the regular Legion? Like, this is all stuff to still be explored, right? Because when we talk about the first 3 chapters of the story, again, the first chapter, Mark Waid with a young Superman just learning to use his powers is what his Action Comics is going to be about. In this story, he's a 16-year-old. He knows how to use his powers, but he's still, to some extent, figuring things out, as opposed to his action run, which, again, go listen to my WonderCon Files panel, listen to the interview that dropped today with Mark Waid talking about this is him and Mom Pop Cat figuring things out for the first time. And then with Dan Slott's run, big changes for Kryptonite coming. Kryptonite's going to be much easier to get. And that's going to cause a challenge. We're going to go from Kryptonite Man to Kryptonite King. Plus, the changes that Dan Slott has in store for the Daily Planet are awesome. I'm not going to spoil it. He talks a little more in detail about it. He told me a lot of it off the record. It's going to be amazing. You're really going to want to check it out. I won't spoil it here, but the only thing I'll say is the Daily Planet's going to go worldwide, and then Joshua Williamson's basically just going to keep doing what Joshua Williamson has been doing, which is writing an excellent Superman story. But his book, the regular Superman title, is going to be the place where this Legion stuff plays out. So, I mean, when you factor all that in, this is a very important book. And for that reason, I had to rank it into my top 3. Plus, the Jorge Jimenez art is absolutely fantastic. So, anyway, what were your thoughts on it, Rocky?
Well, I love this because it's, as a longtime reader, I mean, this is Mark Waid is incorporating the Legion of Superheroes from pre-original Crisis. That's what this is. And even the Superboy having the fact that he's bringing back the adventures of Superman as a boy, Superboy, and it would suit this Superboy having a relationship with the Legion of Superheroes. That's pre-original Crisis. Him with the memory lapses and the memory guards to prevent him from discovering what happens in his future. That's all pre-original Crisis. And the way that Mark Waid is wonderfully incorporating that into this DC universe in such using modern day storytelling and incorporating it into big events like he's doing here. It's fantastic. The use of Validus is absolutely petrified. And just by the way, just a little bit of a tidbit in the Great Darkness saga in the Great Legion of Superheroes, when the Legion of Superheroes defeated Darkseid in the Great Darkness saga in that story written by Paul Levitz, Darkseid cursed the League and said he'd get even with them. And how did he curse the League? Well, he cursed the League because the offspring of Saturn Girl and Lightning Lad they had a son, and that son was revealed ultimately to be Validus. Now, that's from an old story. So, I mean, it's interesting that now Booster Gold used Validus to try to enter Superman in different time periods of Superman's life, both when he was a boy and both as an adult, to try to lure him into the Absolute Universe to hopefully rescue them and defeat the Dark Legion. This is just great stuff. It really is great stuff. Yeah, this is a lot of fun, and this is sort of a must-buy, and this is absolutely a must-buy. This wasn't, even though this isn't not necessarily in my top 5, this is kind of a must-buy if you want to be following the DC. This is an easy buy for me. This is definitely a high recommend, because you got to figure out, just so you keep in the know of what's going to go on in the DC universe, and great writing by all 3 writers that you talked about there.
Yeah, I mean, that's the other part of this. These guys are doing a great job of not that we would expect them not to, but they're doing a really great job of working together. So kudos to them for doing a fantastic job in a lot of ways, and especially with what Dan Slott is doing. When you get Superman books where they're all tied in together, continuity wise, really strongly, in a lot of ways, it reminds me of the Triangle era, for obvious reasons. I don't think these are going to be tied into,
Yeah.
to that extent, because each of them are going to focus on a different aspect, especially when you talk about Action Comics, because it's, like I said, it's going to be Superboy in his early years. But when you talk about all the supporting characters, what have you, and all three of these guys are big fans of the Triangle era, which is one of my favorite eras. But even Action Comics, even though it's set back in the past, was Superman / Superboy learning to use his powers for the first time. There's going to be events that happen in Action Comics that you see, references, callbacks to other things in Superman and Superman Unlimited. You'll see callbacks to things that are happening in action. They purposefully did that, and Mark Waid talks about it in the recent interview, to make sure that Action Comics still feels connected to the main line. So Summer of Superman is coming, and whether you're a Superman fan or not, it's here. These are the tools. Like, this is the perfect time to get somebody who says that I don't like Superman, or I don't think Superman's relevant, or I've just never been able to get into Superman. This is the time. If you're a Superman fan, DC's giving you all the tools to pull people in. I should say Warner Brothers, right? Because you have the James Gunn Superman movie as well, which, man, I cannot wait. I could not be more excited for this. I'm trying to temper my expectations a little bit, because I was pretty excited when Man of Steel was coming out, because
Me too.
I was
Yeah.
like, and then it just failed miserably. But I'm pretty excited. In no way, shape, or form am I expecting that I'm going to have to wait till the actual release date. I'm hoping I can finagle an early screening in somehow, some way, but I'll probably be just there at midnight for the first showing. Or now it's not even midnight, right? Now it's usually like 10 p.m. the night before. But I'm going to see it as early. Whatever show I can get in, whatever screening I can get into as early as possible, I'll definitely be there. So anyway, let's move on. Up next, this next book. Yeah, so this one I currently have it ranked at number 4, but like I said, this is one of the ones that, it could be 4, it could be 6, it could be 5. Like, slide around, because I'm not the biggest fan of Francesco Francavilla's art when it's on a traditional superhero comic. That being said, it does work for this story because it's kind of spooky. So obviously he's handling the art. He does his own colors as usual. Dan Waters is the writer. Wes Abbott on letters. And I got to say, man, I'm still really loving the Dan Waters era of Nightwing. I really loved the Tom Taylor era as well. Obviously that era is beloved. It's Eisner Award winning and what have you. But there are times, I think the biggest challenge that we had with it at times was the pacing that seemed kind of slow. This Dan Waters era, man, like, if Dan Waters keeps up this, and I know we're only one arc and one issue in, but if he keeps up the quality, if he's able to just have great quality and great pacing and intriguing and compelling storytelling issue after issue after issue, which, we're 7 issues in and he's nailed it every time, he's going to, in my mind, surpass the Tom Taylor run. I won't penalize him for not having as good of an artist as Bruno Redondo was, because he was a seminal artist on that. And Dan Waters doesn't necessarily have, he can't say, hey, I want Bruno Redondo. He's that's up to editorial. And not to say the art on these first 7 issues hasn't been great, but again, this is just a personal thing for me, because I love Francavilla. Like, his work on Night of the Ghoul with Scott Snyder is fantastic.
It's fantastic.
But yeah, Dan Waters is on a trajectory in my mind to have an even better run, a run that I will enjoy more than the Tom Taylor run, which is really, really saying something. So
Yeah.
there's still questions and threads or whatever that are left unanswered from the first arc. It's still a Bloodhaven that is struggling to find balance in the underworld gangs because of the power vacuum that was created when Blockbuster was killed. So you still have that going on. You still have Mayor Grayson Lynn, who is Nightwing's sister, who is in bed with, so to speak, with Spherical Solutions, and their CEO, who we know is a member of the Cirque du Sin, and out for revenge on Nightwing. It's still, I think, a little up in the air. It seems like she knows that Dick Grayson and Nightwing are one and the same. But it hasn't explicitly been, unless I missed it or I'm not remembering.
Yeah.
But she does seem to know. Yeah, she does seem to know, because that's the thing I keep going back to. It's like, well, how does she know? Because it was Dick Grayson that was a member of the circus, not Nightwing. So yeah, that's still up in the air, and I'm sure will be explained at some point. But that's just to say that stuff is still going on. This is still a Nightwing that is trying to deal with that. And so I love what Dan Waters has done here, right? Like, he's taking that big idea, and the threads and the questions that are still left unanswered, and he's spinning it into this second arc, but he's grounding it in a way to make it more emotional and more personal. So we can, I think, understand the stakes a little bit more. So basically what happens in this issue, one of the cops that's been using the Spherical Solutions battle armor, the one that killed one of the Teddies, one of the, very young, like 13, 14-year-old boy, at the barest provocation, he gets killed here. And basically it's kind of an exploration of the concept of kind of that thin blue line, right? Like the brotherhood of cops. You never turn in one of your fellow cops, no matter, what corrupt, horrible thing they've done and what have you. And so we meet this sort of urban legend, this myth, if you will, in this issue of this guy who, if you do betray your fellow cops, he shows up and he shoots you with copper bullets, which
Captain
copper is,
Hallow. Yeah, Captain
yeah,
Hallow.
yeah, Captain Hal, yeah. And the whole reason that you don't use copper for bullets, first of all, it's exorbitantly expensive these days. But even back in the day, before copper was really expensive, copper's a very soft metal, and so it can't really handle the literal forces, the physical forces of being fired from a gun. You fire it from a gun and it's spinning so fast, and there's so much force exerted on it that the copper is going to get misshapen. So if it has to fly a long distance, it's not going to be very accurate. From one shot to another, it's going to go in wildly different directions, because it's not going to become misshapen in the same way, in a uniform way every time. So there's no way to predict what it's going to do. It's like a knuckleball, right? Like if you're familiar with baseball, it's just going to act differently every time. But the reason this Captain Hallow is killing people that are, in his mind, betraying other cops or betraying the Bloodhaven PD, he's using copper because that's what their badges used to be made out of. And the urban myth goes that these bullets are made out of the badges of fallen officers. And so again, it's really interesting because it's a more personal, and in a way wrelatable and emotional, impactful way to talk about the Bloodhaven PD, because they're not all bad, right? I mean, Maggie Sawyer, who longtime Superman fans will remember as head of the SCU Special Crimes Unit, I think is what it was called, Metropolis SCU,
Yeah.
over in the pages of Superman, supporting character for a long time. And again, she's one of the good ones. She's here and she's trying to deal with Nightwing, but and solve this murder of this cop that we see in this one. And I'm sure there's going to be more to come, more murders to come. But is she on the chopping block, perhaps, or what have you? And so she's used to dealing with superheroes. But again, Bloodhaven is just such a different city than Metropolis. In a lot of ways, Bloodhaven is even worse than Gotham, in terms of corruption and what have you. So again, fantastic job for Dan Watters to continue to build on the ideas that he established in the first arc, but to be making it more personal and more grounded. And as much as I don't particularly care for Frank Villa's art on a traditional superhero book, in a lot of ways, this isn't really a traditional superhero story. It's more of a detective story, more of a noir story. So it does work, and it is really moody, and just a fantastic job. And Dan Watters continues to give Dick Grayson a really good voice. Just in terms of the way he talks and his vocabulary and what have you, like he gets it. Dan Watters gets Dick Grayson. And man, from Nightwing, it was a little rocky there for a while. Benjamin Percy was on, and then it was just a couple issues, and he jumped off. I think he even went exclusive at Marvel. That was part of the reason he left. And then Dan Jurgens had to kind of fill in. That's when we got the Rick Grayson stuff that a lot of people didn't really care for. But from there, we got that Tom Taylor era, which, again, award-winning. And now we're in this Dan Watters era. So Nightwing has had a run of some super talented and writers and some very high-quality stories for a long time. And I'm sort of here for it because, believe it or not, Nightwing, in some ways, has a more rabid fan base than Batman or Superman. And I have my theories for why that's the case. But what's interesting, like even during Rebirth, when that was announced at WonderCon, and I did those 16 interviews in one day, talking to all the different creative teams for all the different Rebirth titles that were coming, my most downloaded episode from that day was Tim Seeley talking about Nightwing. And it's still one of my most downloaded episodes ever. And this was, back when in the audio only days. And I've had a lot of time to think about it because at various times I'd go, I wonder what my number one downloaded episode, and it was always that episode talking Nightwing with Tim Seeley. And I think I understand why. I think if you talk about like Batman or Superman or Wonder Woman or Harley Quinn, like some of these characters that probably have more fans than Nightwing, just in terms of sheer volume, but it's so big that there's not really a consensus for like why they love the character. You know, it's a much broader um, sort of cross section of fandom for one of those bigger characters. Where I feel like Nightwing fans, they tend to be more like minded. Um, and so if you can appeal to one Nightwing fan or a small group of Nightwing fans, you have probably appealed to the majority of Nightwing fans. And I don't know if that makes sense, but that's the only thing that I can come up with of why that's the case. It's like fans of Nightwing like Nightwing for very similar reasons. And if you, again, have a story or a run that appeals to one or a small group of fans, it's probably going to appeal to the majority of fans. Like I just don't see a lot of. It's not a situation where you see sometimes with a Batman run or a Superman run where you'll have some people loving it. Oh, I'm a Superman fan. I love this era of Superman. Oh, I'm a Superman fan. I can't stand this era of Superman. Like you don't see that with Nightwing fans as much. Usually, if it's Nightwing's experiencing a good run, the majority of his fans are enjoying it. So, anyway, just a theory. I don't know if it's accurate or not, but Nightwing has definitely had two great runs. Just finished a great run and in the midst or the beginning of another one here. So, what are your thoughts on Nightwing?
Well,
Because
uh,
this
yeah,
did
this
make is in your top five as well.
yeah. Well, I actually, as I'm reflecting on it and I'm listening to your review, I actually moved it. It's in my top three now. Uh, Frankie Villa's art's fantastic, and the whole, if I didn't know better, I think Dan Waters specifically chose Frankie Villa's art specifically for this issue because it just works so well. There is, in fact, if I didn't know better, I think Frankie Villa is getting actually better at drawing faces. And because he's really good at drawing horror and like people who are screaming in terror and what have you. He's really good at drawing horror for the horror genre. And there's a conversation here where Maggie Sawyer is talking to the widow of Detective Frank Dietrich, who was killed by the Captain Hallow character. And it's such an eerie sort of conversation because you think this Frank Dietrich is a good cop because you think that remember that in Tom Taylor's run supposedly all the bad cops were cleaned out of Bloodhaven. They were all scooped up, and there should just be good cops left because Tom Taylor's run was so happy. I mean, Bloodhaven was cleaned up. In fact, one of the criticisms of Tom Taylor's run, at least in my mind, is that it was just a little bit too feel good. It was almost too perfect. It was too conveniently wrapped up. Dan Waters is a little bit more real, introducing, hey, these cops that are still on the force in Bloodhaven, they got flaws of their own, and one of them is Frank Dietrich. He seems like a good cop on the surface, and but he was very much by the book, so much so that he was borderline abusive he was a terrible husband and not a particularly good father. And that really comes out in Maggie Sawyer's conversation with the widow there. And it was just sort of like haunting. And the facial expressions of Frank Villa just really it really made it for me. And it makes you, and enough that I'm wondering this Captain Hallow character that's sort of returning and using copper for bullets. Who is this Captain Hallow? What's his motive? And exactly why kill these cops, even though these cops are flawed? What do they deserve to die? I'm not really, so it's interesting. And anyways, it really works for me. I won't add more to that because you talk quite a bit about it, and I don't disagree with substantively with anything you said. And I like your theory about Nightwing doesn't necessarily have any particular errors like Batman, and it's interesting. So your theory might be correct on that. But I thought this was really good, and it rose in the ranks already for my top five this week. Sorry, you're on mute, my friend.
Sorry about that. Yeah, I'm curious, everybody, if you think my theory on why that Nightwing fans are more like-minded. If you agree or disagree, like tell me why. Like put it down in the comments. I'm very curious because again, it's something I've come back to time and time again over the years. Because that was 2016 DC Rebirth. Yeah, that was almost 10 years ago now. It's crazy to think it was that long ago. But I'm again, I've thought about this a lot for that reason, and I'm curious if people agree or disagree, and don't just tell me whether you agree or disagree. But I want to know why. I want to know maybe if I'm missing something or a different perspective that you might bring to it. So let us know down in the comments. All right, up next. This one, where is it at for me? This one didn't make my top five, and it's a little bit it's a little bit of a nitpick for why not, but it's New Gods number 5, written by Ram V, Evan Cagle on art, Andrew McLean handles the first 4 pages as guest artist, and then Francesco Segala on colors, Tom Napolitano on letters. I am still really really enjoying New Gods. We get a chance to see the Niktari. They're continuing their invasion of New Genesis. And what is up with DC lately? Just destroying planets. We've seen Thanagar destroyed. Um,
Yeah,
now we're seeing New Genesis basically be destroyed.
Genesis.
There was another.
Yeah,
I'm trying to think. There was another planet that we saw destroyed or devastated. I mean, Isamalt is in bad shape as well. The home
yeah.
of the Red Lanterns. So here we go again uh, with a planet being destroyed, and it's pretty interesting because now it means these new gods are going to flee to Earth, which I think is really cool. So there's an epicness to this, um, and the villains are obviously so powerful. So that's what I'm enjoying. Plus, what I was just talking about with what Dan Waters is doing in the second arc of Nightwing, it sort of applies here as well. But Ramvi's doing it all simultaneously because we are getting a more personal story. The head of the Niktari, Karak, what's his name? Karak Ator.
Yeah,
We find out he's much more powerful because we're seeing kind of the um, to borrow a form or borrow a term from another property, right? In his final form, we're seeing Highfather in his final form as powerful as ever, and he disintegrates the head of the Niktari, this Karak Ator. But it doesn't matter. Like, as powerful as Highfather is, this guy just puts himself back together, and Kara kind of laughs at him, going, "You think you can do anything to me? No, I've been through it all. I've been through the wars or whatever." And we're going to destroy New Genesis, and actually Graven, who we all thought was dead, Darkseid's first son, is going to be basically put in place as regent to oversee the dismantling of New Genesis. Like, this is bad stuff. This is genocide. This is the annihilation of a civilization. And whatever new gods, whatever inhabitants of New Genesis are able to flee, are going to flee to Earth. Which is, again, is interesting. But the balance between this going on here, basically what appears to be the end of the new gods, the end of this era of gods, and perhaps that's why we have this young child born on Earth that has godlike powers, who represents the next generation of gods. So the new gods are going to fall by the wayside of the old gods, but like any living creature, they want to survive. They want to continue to exist. But is that why this kid was born? And Highfather's way of perhaps stopping that, and his way to ensure the survival, was to send Orion out to kill this kid. And we have the beginning of the fight between Orion and Scott Free, Mr. Miracle, along with Big Barda, trying to save this child, and Orion trying to stop him. And then Superman shows up, and a Superman Orion fight is always fantastic,
yeah,
always. And the
yeah.
Evan Cagle art is really fantastic as well, because he's not, again, much like Francavilla, not a traditional superhero artist. And the scenes that he draws on New Genesis with Karok like disintegrating and putting himself back together are amazing. But my nitpick, and the reason that it fell out, and I could have put it at 6. I think ultimately I ranked it at 8, but really 6, 7, 8, they're interchangeable. Um, Superman shows up on the last page, and here we go, confrontation, right? The cover of the book shows Enter the Justice League, and it shows John Stewart, it shows Wonder Woman, it shows Superman. And I should have known better. And I'm not calling anybody out specifically. This is just the way comics are now, especially if you want to sell. There could be some people that go, "Oh wait, New Gods, and Justice League finally, crossover." I've heard this is going to have a lot to do with what's going on in the main universe, and superheroes and whatever. Oh, this is the issue. I'm gonna, maybe I dipped in on one. It wasn't for me. I dipped out. Now I'm gonna pick this one up because Superman is on the cover, along with other members of Justice League. And here we go. And I'm reading it the whole time. I'm turning each page going, okay, when's Superman going to show up? When's the Justice League going to show up? This should have been the cover for the next issue because it's a little bait and switch. You know what I mean? And so as much as I enjoyed this issue, I'm penalizing it a little bit for that. And that's not fair to Rom or Evan Cagle or any of the creative team because, again, that's not up to them. Choice for what goes on the cover is not up to them. And this was a very enjoyable issue. But I couldn't help it. Like it bothered me a little bit that, and in a way, it's sort of a backhanded compliment to the creative team that what happened in this issue was so amazing. I can't wait to see more of Superman and the Justice League interact with this story, become part of this story. But now I got to wait another month for it, so that just bugged me a little bit. So anyway, not surprised, and not anything new. Comics do this all the time. Sometimes they'll throw a person on the cover and they don't show up at all. At least he showed up on the last page. I guess I should look at it like that, right? So, Anyway, what are your thoughts on it, Rocky? Because it did make your top 5, yeah.
Yeah, I did, yeah, for sure, yeah. Well, first of all, I will call it out because it is annoying. Wonder Woman doesn't show up; she's on the cover. I don't even, and then Green Lantern, John Stewart, he's on the what the hell is that about? In any event, frankly, seeing Superman next issue fight Orion, that's all right, but I'd much rather watch Big Barda continue to fight Orion. That's more epic. And we do get some Big Barda versus Orion goodness in this issue. That was pretty cool stuff. There's also there's a lot of epic revelations here, or not revelations so much as moments. And one particular moment of realization where Highfather, after the ray, light ray sacrifices his life to save Highfather. Highfather realizes in his conversation with Orion that, oh my God, the source was trying to tell us that, the source was trying to tell us something significant about this unborn child, and this unborn child is likely our only hope. And oh my God, I sent Orion to kill it. So at least that's how I interpreted Highfather realizing, oh no, what have I done? Oh no, Orion, why did I send Orion to do that? Because obviously we know that that child is the only hope that they have to defeat the Nectari. Did I say that right? Nectari? Nectari? I think I said that right.
Yeah, I mean, that's how I pronounce it. I don't know if that's correct or not. I mean, that's kind of how it's spelled. So that's what I'm going with.
But really epic moments. And, the moments wouldn't work as well as they do without Cagle's incredible art. Particularly, you mentioned that incineration scene. That is absolutely incredible. And then his body, the Nectari's body sort of reforms itself. And it looks horrific. There is a horrific element to this. And there's a darkness to it. Remember that dark side is in the absolute universe now. There's a new darkness in the universe filling that void. That's what the Nectari is. Ram V has come under criticism. Some of it came from me in terms of maybe building up the story leading up to the Nectari, the origins of the Nectari. But now this is where that pays dividends, where we can appreciate just how epic in scope the threat to the universe and possibly the multiverse actually is from the Nectari, and you see how powerful they are, and how you think, oh my God, so now the new gods are going to go and flee to Earth, and then what? Then they're just waiting for the inevitable. So. This kid who's protected by Big Barda and Mr. Miracle against Orion, while Highfather better high tide, get his ass to Earth to stop Orion from fulfilling his mission. Because trying to stop Orion, good luck with that. But in any event, I thought this was a lot of fun, and I've been enjoying this series. And yeah, this was definitely my top 5.
All right. Up next, we have Catwoman number 75. This doesn't make either of our top 5. Actually, it comes in at number 11 for me. But that's not to say that it's not an enjoyable story. And I'm going to sound like a broken record here, but the problem that I have with it is the same problem I've had with it all along. It's a huge cast, and it's hard to keep track of which characters are which, other than Evie, who is Catwoman, who's undercover. But the bones of the story, the heist, the crew being held together, and the fact that we're flashing back to the past of Catwoman, all of those things I find to be intriguing. So this is going to be one of those things where it's a multiple arc storyline, and it's going to read much better in a collected format where you can read it all together. Because trying to remember who these characters are, once a month is just difficult based on the amount of maybe if you only read Catwoman, you got it, like it's on you, right? Or if you're reading it multiple times, I just don't have time for that. So I think the art is solid. I think I'm going to enjoy it if I can find time to read it in a collected form. But as it stands now, it doesn't quite land for me, because I'm not as invested in these characters because I don't know who they are, and it's hard to keep them straight. So again, it's partly on me. And if I had time, I'd go back and reread this Torrin Grunbeck run from the beginning, because I think I'd get more out of it. But
Yeah.
again, I just don't have I just don't have the time. It's yeah. But
Well,
she's handling the scripting, and I do enjoy it. There's a panache, there's a style, there's that international intrigue, international thief feel to it, which I do very much enjoy, and it very much suits Catwoman. Patricio Del Pesce handles the art and the colors. Only have known him for doing color work before, but he does a great job with art here. The storytelling and transitions are really strong. Steve Wan's on the letters does a fantastic job and has been all along. So there are positives here. And again, I don't think it's bad. Something had to be ranked last. And again, like, this might be something where I go back and I reread it in a collected edition, and I'm like, man, I just love this. This is so great. But it's just not there for me yet. So anyway, what are your thoughts on it, Rocky?
this is it actually kind of hit me why this has been. I've been very complimentary toward this series so far. This is going to be my first a little bit more critical review with this issue. And one of the things that actually quite bothered me this issue is that Catwoman doesn't show up throughout the entire issue. She's for and I realize what this series is missing, and what it's missing, and it's significant is it's if this is the original Sins of Selena Kyle. So then I assumed, when did this take place? Did this take place prior to Frank Miller's Batman Year One? Is the early years of Selena Kyle? Why is she in Paris? Wasn't clear. She's in Paris. She's got blonde hair. She goes by the name of Ellie. She's working with another crew. This doesn't sound like something that Selena Kyle did in her early years. And if it is, what's missing is that there are times when I'm not sure where Ellie is on the page. I had to remind myself, well, she's the blonde one with blonde hair. And there's also there's nothing in this story that reminds us that we're reading a Catwoman comic. There's nothing. There's just nothing. Occasionally, we'll have a scene in the present where she mentions her name Selena, but then even then, she doesn't really look like Catwoman. She looks like just a random brunette. There's nothing connecting it to it. She doesn't even have a costume or the early hints of, maybe give us some early signs that she's going to be Catwoman one day, or a cat tattoo, or even show her petting a cat. I mean, there's actually piglets in this issue, but no cat. It's just odd. It feels like Ocean's 11, and it has that feel for it, and it's got kind of an espionage feel to it to a certain extent, and that's all well and good, and the art's pretty good. The art there, it's okay. On the other hand, I gotta say, to be blunt, it just doesn't feel like a Catwoman story. And I guess it's not supposed to be, maybe because it's early days of Selena Kyle. But then why is it in a Catwoman comic? To be honest, and I think that in this issue, if you're buying this up, I mean, the cover is great. It's a great looking cover, but I gotta tell you, it's going through this, you'd be completely, totally lost if you're going in and you're picking this up on the stands. Now, fortunately, there's all kinds of cover buys. There's really not a lot of nice covers, but you have to read this as a trade. But how many people are going to pick this up as a trade? And the art's been inconsistent throughout the series, in my view. This is one of the better issues for the art. I don't know, for whatever reason that might be. But in any event, So I'm enjoying it, but I think the story's dragged on too long, and I hope it ends soon. And I'm not sure how long this is going to drag on for, but um, yeah, this didn't make my top five for sure. It would have been closer to probably my 10th or 11th choice as well.
Yeah, I mean, again, I don't think it's that bad, but again, something has to be last. And yeah, interesting that it doesn't feel like a Catwoman story to you. I mean, it's a heist story. She's stealing stuff, but
Yeah,
I guess to your point, it takes more than that to really feel like a Catwoman story. But also to your point, yeah, if this is early on in Selena's career where she's kind of learning the skills to be a thief. I mean, typically we don't have a Catwoman that works with as large of a crew. I mean, it's like 10 people that are on this crew, so that yeah, that
yeah.
feels a little unfamiliar. But again, she's kind of learning the ropes. So yeah, we'll see how it goes. All right. Up next, we have Zatanna number 3. This is from writer and artist Jamal Campbell. He's handling his own color work as well. Letters by Ariana Mayer. It's Zatanna number 3. Comes in at number 6 for me. Again, like really tough to easily could have been in my top 5 because I am enjoying it. But it comes in on your top 5. So I'm gonna let you take the lead on this one. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm quite enjoying this. Much to my surprise, too. Actually, I would not have thought that, especially Campbell coming in, being both the writer and the artist. I knew I'd love his art, and I do. I love his illustrations. He draws a sexy Zatanna, and in this issue, he does a really good job of drawing. He's because he's a mastering. He's a master of the entire craft here. Everything about this comic is because of him. He wrote it, he drew it, he colored it, the whole 9 yards. And in this one, Zatanna ends up, she ends up in I guess, in a magical world where it's an illusion and she knows it's not real, but she believes she's with Bruce Wayne. And the color work here really stands out on every single page. The color work is just fantastic. And it works so well because she's dealing with this, the main villain, the white, it's not the White Witch. What's the name of is it the White Woman? I can't remember.
Lady
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 White.
White.
Lady White, yeah, sorry. But the color work is fantastic, and it really enhances the magic itself. And uh, and this is you really get a sense of the tragedy of the death of Adam. He was sort of like the magician's helper who was helping Zatanna. He was ultimately sort of like the victim here, and uh, this issue there's sort of a battle on two fronts. Blue Devil is tied up in Adam's apartment, and he's being sort of interrogated. Meanwhile, Clayface is part of this illusion, and Clayface himself is being manipulated psychologically to believe the illusion that's being orchestrated. And it really works very well. And Clayface himself is the victim of sort of a magical machination because there's while Zatanna has a sword through her, every time Zatanna uses magic or says something backwards to escape an attack of some kind, the sword sort of embeds itself deeper in her. I think that's what they're sort of going with. And meanwhile, the same fate seems to befall Clayface, and Zatanna wants to help Clayface because he's being manipulated, but Clayface blames her for the loss of the illusion because Clayface used to be an actor and he prided himself and he wants attention. He was a narcissist. He wanted the attention. He wanted to be the best. And kudos to Jamal Campbell for really understanding the character of Basil of Clayface. And it works really well here. So it's nice that we got some really great characterization of Clayface, great characterization for Zatanna, fantastic illustrations, and they really seem to just really work and pop off the page. And again, every single time that Zatanna she seems to be traveling through different worlds and realms, and this is something that Jamal Campbell illustrated so well from the first issue to now. This is something where I almost want this to be an oversized hardcover, this first story arc when it's completed, because this is just going to be a visual feast when we final get this in. And I'm hoping it'll come out in hardcover form on high quality glossy paper, but that's probably too much to ask. But I quite enjoyed this, and yeah, And Jamal Campbell continues to show that he loves this character. He loves drawing this character. And I got to admit, I almost feel like I owe Jamal Campbell an apology because, damn, he's a better storyteller than I want to give him credit for. So, yeah, good stuff.
Yeah, I mean, he's done his own stories in the past. Obviously, he co-plotted and co-created Naomi with Brian Michael Bendis. So yeah, he is super talented. I mean, I think based on the strength of his art here, I think he might be my second favorite Zatanna artist after Adam Hughes. Because yeah, this is fantastic, and it is interesting. It does feel a little bit out of continuity, right? Just in terms of what's going on right now with the Justice League and Inferno and all that is not mentioned at all. But I love seeing, like, first of all, the only thing you got to do to get me to enjoy a comic is put Blue Devil in it. Like, that guy does not get anywhere near
Yeah.
enough attention or show up as often as he should. So I love that we're getting some Dan Cassidy here. And yeah, this is an intriguing story. I really like what Jamal Campbell's doing. So fantastic job. Yeah, and I should mention that one comes in. Did I say my? Yeah, I said it came in at number 6 for me. So, all right. Up next, we have Batman Superman World's Finest, number 38. Writer Mark Waid, art by Clayton Henry, colors by Tamara Bonvillain, letters by Steve Wands. This one was just okay for me. It comes in at number 10, so next to last. It's the first part of the We Are Yesterday crossover between Justice League Unlimited and World's Finest. This is part 1 of 6. It's interesting because Mark Waid's World's Finest tends to be set in the past. Justice League is in the present, but supposedly it's the Legion of Doom from the past that is actually Inferno, that it has been the villains in Justice League Unlimited so far. So I guess that it makes sense. I really enjoyed the opening sequence because we have Bruce Wayne and Clark Kent getting to interact in public, in their civilian identities, which is fun. And they give each other grief, and it's pretty fun. It's typical Mark Waid humor, which I really enjoy.
Yeah.
But other than that, yeah, it just felt a little paint by the numbers to me. There's nothing really that grabbed me because we really haven't seen we don't see the Legion of Doom together here, as a threat. It's just Gorilla Grodd. Like, even though this is, part 1, it feels sort of like a prologue. Like, it hasn't really gotten going yet.
Yeah.
And I was just, again, it's my own thing, right? Like, my expectations were too high. I was expecting this to be, hey, this is the full out war between the Justice League and the old school time traveling Legion of Doom. And that's not what we have here yet. So, yeah, the Clayton Henry art's fantastic, though. But, Clayton Henry art's always fantastic. So, yeah, for
Yeah.
me, this was just okay.
Yeah, I want to give a shout out to the humor, Mark Waid, in the conversation between Clark Kent and Bruce Wayne. Of course, Bruce Wayne he's there. It's Wayne Aeronautics, and he's hired Hal Jordan as the pilot to test one of his jets, and he's figured. Unfortunately for Bruce Wayne, he wrong as the Batman side of him thinks that everything's going to be okay because if something goes wrong, Hal has his power ring. But then Clark had to remind him that, by the way, Hal doesn't take his power ring with him when he test flights jets because he likes the adrenaline rush without it, and it's like, oh no, and naturally something goes wrong, and Hal Jordan ends up sort of crash landing or over a gorilla, ends up getting shot down by a Gorilla Grodd, and this is the first attempt that a Gorilla Grodd made to sort of take over the world, and this is another, again, what Mark Waid is doing. He's incorporating in so many ways, the pre-original Crisis storylines, or even soon thereafter. He's bringing all those classic storylines back, but he's revitalizing these stories and updating them for the modern age. This was Gorilla Grodd's really first major attempt to sort of take over the planet. He ultimately fails, but at the end is confronted by his future self, which has taken place in the pages of Justice League Unlimited with the Legion of Doom. We know that the past selves of the Legion of Doom are interacting with the future, with our present selves. And in any event, this is all great stuff. Mark Waid is having fun here, and I feel like Mark Waid's making up for the 20-year absence that he wasn't allowed to be at DC because he refused to be at DC because Dan Didio was there. He always vowed he'd never come back to DC as long as Didio was there. But Didio's gone, and all due respect to Didio, I'm glad because we got Mark Waid back, and he's doing a hell of a job.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
he is. He's doing
Uh,
a fantastic job. But I mean, and this is not to say that I'm not enjoying it, but when I rank his work that he's done at DC so far,
yeah.
World's Finest comes in last for me. Not to say it's not, it's like choosing between apples and oranges. Like it's still good. It's just I've enjoyed everything else he's done a little more because I like the stuff that's set in current time. Um, More so than the stuff that feels classic and is in the past. But that's just a personal preference. Again, it's not to say it's been bad in any way, shape, or form. And him teamed up with Dan Mora or Clayton Henry is just fantastic. So, and I'm really, I say that, and I'm going to sound a little hypocritical here, because I am really looking forward to his Action Comics run, even though that's set in the past. Um, but my God, I just can't wait to get a true, authentic Superboy. Yeah, it's going to be awesome.
Yes.
All right. Up next, we have Challengers of the Unknown, issue number 5. This is from writer Christopher Cantwell, art by Sean Isaacs and Amin K. Nahelapan, colors by Romulo Fajardo Jr., letters by Hassan Otsman Elhau. This one was just a little bit of a disappointment as well. It comes in at number 9 for me, only because while we get an ending, this is the last issue of the series, clearly we don't get answers necessarily for why this was happening. And we're told at the end that, more to come with the Challengers in the All-In era of DC. So it's not any particular place we know we can go and look. And I just feel like the Challengers are one of those groups of characters that, when handled in the right way, and I feel like they have been handled in the right way here by Christopher Cantwell, can be really interesting. And so the fact that anybody who, maybe picked this up on this, maybe they're Christopher Cantwell fans, maybe they love *Halt and Catch Fire*, maybe they're, fans of a Doctor Doom series or what have you, they're not going to know where to go to get more of a Challenger story. And I think that's a little bit of a missed opportunity there.
Mhm.
Yes, the Challengers of the Unknown that are on the Justice League satellite, the Watchtower, yes, they have the Omega energy removed from them. Yes, it's a bit catastrophic. Yes, this is a fun story with a lot of action, a lot of excitement, and things do go sideways at some point. We don't know exactly why the Omega energy, there's a theory, and it's a cool one, right? That the biggest receptacle of Omega energy in the main DC universe was Darkseid himself. Now he's gone. Omega energy itself is looking for hosts, basically. It chooses the Challengers because Omega energy is the energy of death, and these Challengers of the Unknown have gotten to be, as close to death as you can get without actually dying. Like, all that's really super interesting. But how and why, or how, I guess, it infected them and where it's gone now, those are the questions that are still left unanswered. And not that I think, every story, to feel like a complete story, needs to give us all the answers. But I mean, this is really left wide open here. So part of why it's ranked so low for me is I just don't want it to end. Like, the art has been fantastic from Isaacs and the Helipan throughout. I love the sort of personal feel, the intimacy of getting to know these Challengers in a way that I haven't before. I haven't read like every Challenger's appearance or what have you, but Cantwell he brought he made us care about these characters. I focusing on each of the main core team of the Challengers. Each issue subsequent to this kind of focused on Prof or Red or June, and again, it made me care about these characters more than I have before because I feel like I understand them. He gave them personality. He gave us insights into their lives before they were Challengers, which again added context to them as characters, which in turn made me care more about them, which in turn makes me want to read more about them. It's sort of the exact opposite of what we have had with Catwoman, right? Where there's so many characters and I'm not sure who's who, whatever, and I have no in. And so, I find myself like not invested in the story. This is the opposite of that. I'm hugely invested in these characters now. And yeah, it's just a little disappointing that I'm not going to know exactly where to go. Now, I have the advantage that I read all the DC books, every week when they come out, so I'm going to get the rest of the Challenger story. But yeah, feels like a little bit of a missed opportunity for those that don't. So anyway, anything to add, Rocky?
Well, I was a little bit, I was disappointed in this issue. I was a little bit confused by it, to be honest with you. Even the summary at the beginning, where Christopher Cantwell sort of explains what's happened up until now, I thought there were some inconsistencies there. I'm not going to go into it because it's in the minutia and the details, but suffice to say, I mean, if as far as I can tell, this story was basically we got all these challenges of the unknown were sent to different parts of the galaxy of the universe where there was pockets of omega energy. They became infected with omega energy, and omega is death. Death is absolute. Slight little reference to the absolute universe where Darkseid is. And then at the end here, Rocky Davis, a member of the Challengers team, and Ultravac end up saving the Justice League Watchtower because the Justice League Watchtower becomes an Omega Rift because all this energy sort of leaves the Challengers and it creates an Omega Rift, a space-time rift of some kind, and somehow Ultravac and Rocky Davis are able to close that door, and they're believed to have been killed, but in fact they've been sent into the past. Now, it's interesting because it says at the end that the Challenger story will continue across the All In saga, which is pretty cool because of Rocky Davis and the Ultra and the Ultravac are trapped in the past, or then that's interesting because then that way Mark Waid and other writers can tell past stories where Rocky Davis and Ultravac are actually there, and it's another way of updating past storylines, which is kind of cool. And so you can kind of see how Mark Waid's ideas. What I love about the DC universe right now is that I see an architect. I see a plan. I see a guiding hand, and dare I say, I think it's Mark Waid's guiding hand, or with Christopher Cantwell. I love it for finally how many years? I mean, I went over 10 years with DC, wondering, does anybody know what they're doing? Is there a guiding hand here? What the hell's going on? I'm finally starting to see here that, God damn, maybe they know what they're doing. And this is another reason why I feel so good about DC since DC All In. I really feels, and I feel like I want to credit Mark Waid, but I mean, I think it's the whole team firing on all cylinders. There's only one or two writers that want to be outliers and still insist on doing their own thing. But for the most part, I mean, everyone's
That's
on
a
board.
that's a shout out to Tom King. I know what you're doing. I know you do it every time. All
Yeah.
good. The funny thing is, Tom admits it. He goes, "Yeah, I don't work well with others. He just doesn't." Which is funny because his first DC assignment was Grayson.
Yeah.
We had to do it with Tim Seeley. But yeah, he likes to do
But
his own
I
thing.
have nice things to say about Tom King this week, as we will discover.
Yeah,
As when
yeah.
we talk
Up,
about it. So
yeah. Up next, if you're done talking challengers, we got
yeah,
Wonder
I'm
Woman.
done talking challenges. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So yeah, I don't have that much to say about this next issue. We're 20 issues into Wonder Woman. This is issue number 20, and I think it's interesting that this is probably the first time in 20 issues where Rocky likes an issue of Wonder Woman. Tom King's Wonder Woman run more than I do. So, and I did enjoy it, but it does come in at number 7 for me, and part of that is the art. Not that I don't like Guillaume March, but I don't care for his art as much as I love Daniel Semper's art. Like I love it. I'm more of a fan of Guillaume March from a few years back, or more than a few years. Like his art when he launched Catwoman for the New 52, I thought was really awesome. His style has changed a little bit. It's become a little more textured since then. His line weights have gotten heavier. His art, like the word that I would use previous, his art had a delicacy to it, and it's just not as delicate as it used to be. So I don't enjoy his art as much as I used to. Now, that's not to say it's not good, but I just personally don't enjoy it as much as I used to. So he handles the art duties on this instead of Daniel. And so for me, that's part of the reason I don't enjoy this as much as previous issues of Wonder Woman. But he does handle the art. Tom King obviously is writing it. Clayton Cowles is still the letter. And Guillaume is also coloring his own work here. And I mean, there's nothing inherently wrong with the colors, but there's also nothing about the color work that really stands out to me as well. So as far as the story, it's interesting, but again, like I just love Daniel's art so much. I couldn't help as I was reading this, but think, I wonder what this would look like if Daniel had drawn it. And that's not really fair to Guillaume. But it is Batman basically heading to the Mascara to help Wonder Woman solve a murder. So not the most original idea, but I always enjoy this dynamic, and I'm always a fan of Batman using his detective skills as opposed to the power creep that we get for him, have gotten for him over the years. But yeah, anyway, this comes in at number 10 for me. Number 10, no, number 7, sorry, number 7 for me. So what are your thoughts on it?
Well, it's so funny because this comes in easily in my top five, and I just want to say that when I heard the premise of this story, that oh my God, of course Wonder Woman is too stupid to figure out to solve a murder mystery on her own. She needs Batman's help on Themyscira. Whatever happened to the wisdom of Athena? That was my cynicism coming into this issue. And frankly, I'm happy to report that I've not been a huge fan of Tom King's Wonder Woman run for the most part. But I will say that just like in his Batman run, what I wasn't a huge fan of, he would occasionally have vignettes and stories that would resonate with me. In particular, his Batman Annual #2 is fantastic, and this is one where I enjoy this. Wonder Woman does call upon the help of Batman because Hippolyta wakes up. Hippolyta, of course, we know is a god. She wakes up on Olympus, and beside her in Hippolyta's bed is a dead Ares. And of course, she's deemed Hippolyta is the prime suspect in Ares' murder. And I think Zeus and the other gods, they don't really like Hippolyta because if we recall, Hippolyta became a goddess ostensibly to join the gods to make sure that the Amazons were properly represented and that keep an eye on the gods so they wouldn't cause more chaos for her Amazons. And maybe Zeus or some particular god wants to set Hippolyta up because the punishment for murdering another god is apparently, according to the story, mortality. You become mortal, and if you become mortal, well, you're not a god anymore, and you can die and be killed. Well, Wonder Woman wants Batman's help. It's her mother, so I'm thinking maybe she's thinking initially she lacks some objectivity. She wants Batman's help. And where I think the issue here, I think shines for me is for it's those moments where it's the character moments here just happen to work for me. They don't always work for me in this series, but it worked for me here in terms of the relationship between Wonder Woman and Batman. The how Batman views Wonder Woman, the high amount of respect he has for her, the high amount of obvious respect Wonder Woman has for Batman, the interactions with the gods. In many ways, Batman wants to be respectful. He is on Olympus. He knows he wants to be more respectful. And it's Wonder Woman who's a little bit more disrespectful. And Wonder Woman is frustrated with the gods. She thinks she believes very strongly her mother's being set up. While she doesn't know if her mother is guilty or not, even she comes. It becomes quite clear when they interview Hippolyta that she's likely been set up by someone. Batman makes it. The conversation with Zeus is quite good. The dialogue, I think, is clear and crisp, and it's really kind of cool at times. Where Batman asks Zeus, "Do you know who I am?" And then Zeus says something to the effect of, "There are men, there are gods, and then there is Batman." I thought that was a pretty good line, and I thought this was very well done. I thought that it wasn't overwrought with too much dialogue. I thought there was a moment here that I actually like that Batman's taken off the scene relatively quickly. He's shot. Somebody steals a bolt of lightning from Zeus and tries to take Batman out. Batman has 24 hours to solve the murder or he's going to be sacrificed. He did that for Diana so that they could gain access and interview the various gods to see where they were at. And the sacrifice that Batman makes, he ends up injured. Wonder Woman is angry. Somebody tries to take out Batman. I like it as a reader. This is a Wonder Woman comic. I want Wonder Woman to be the one that solves this murder, not Batman. And so I love how Batman's taken sort of off the playing field. In the middle of this story, while at the same time we get really great character moments between Batman and Wonder Woman, and we get some insight into what Wonder Woman's thinking herself. There's a great moment between Aphrodite and Batman where Aphrodite basically tells Batman, "However you want me, wherever you want me, you can have me." And even Batman gets distracted because, of course, it's gorgeous Aphrodite, and who ostensibly left with Ares and was possibly a suspect in Ares' murder. And I just thought it. I thought it. It really worked. And There's again a particular moment where Batman talks about how when he prayed for the first time, it was after he had met her. That Batman never believed that for Batman, he didn't believe in gods, and he lied earlier. At one point, he tells Diana that God is in the alley, referring to the alley where his parents were killed, and then later says that he it was after meeting Diana that he prayed for the first time. And very high compliment to Diana, because it's sort of it's one of the things I wish that Tom King would do more of, was to show us who Wonder Woman is through Wonder Woman. But in this issue, he shows us some aspects of Wonder Woman as seen through the eyes and the mind of Batman, uh, and that works as well. And I thought that was very effectively done. And I thought this was a really good issue. And it just, I really wish we had more of these kinds of issues than the long narrative that we've been sort of gotten up to this point. But I do want to give Tom King a compliment here, because I've been pretty hard on his Wonder Woman one, and I really did enjoy this. And by the way, Guillaume March, I love this interior art. I think it's more appropriate than Daniel Semper's art. I'm glad it's him. I have hardcover editions of Guillaume March's art. I got his hardcover books. I love his art, and I love his Gotham Siren series, which I think is classic. One of my favorite series artistically, and he ranks up there. He's one of probably my top 10 favorite artists, and he has a sexiness in the way he draws women, and the way he draws Aphrodite here in Wonder Woman. There's a sexiness to it that I just love. Less so his men, but his style just suits me for whatever reason. But so, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I know you love Guillaume March, so I'm not surprised to hear you say it. But don't you feel like his art has become a little more textured? It doesn't. It's not quite the same as it used to be, or do you feel like that's just I'm seeing things?
Well, in actual fact, he's it is it's yeah, I would agree with you.
Okay.
He's actually done a lot more cover work, and he's done a
Yeah.
lot more. Uh, but I don't know. I still like when he goes. I still like seeing it, and I actually thought he brought. This is some of his better art. The last time I saw some of this line work here is really crisp and clear on this in this issue. And the conversations in the conversations in the Batmobile, when Wonder Woman's looking over at him, she looks so gorgeous with the hair, with her hair over one of her eyes, and she's just glancing over at Batman as he's driving, and it's a rainstorm. I think it really sets the ambiance and the mood in an epic way, and you can feel the majesty of and the wriggleness of Diana, but also the grimness of Batman as these two very different characters interact, and it really works. And fortunately, Tom King's dialogue, I think, even heightens the moment, and that's not always the case. So that's why I like this. That's why this issue surprised the hell out of me, because I literally went in a cynical bastard, and I came out with a smile on my face.
Yeah, that page that you're referring to, that art does remind me of his more of the style that he had when I first saw his art that I really enjoyed with the more delicate line work. But I think it's because it's zoomed in on her face. Because typically, what I find is that heavier lines are usually on when he does like the anatomy, like people's bodies. So
Mhm.
anyway, he's a super talented artist, and his sense of storytelling is very good. Again, it's just a personal thing for me. So anyway, let's move on. Up next, we have Titans number 22 from writer John Layman. Daniel Bayliss handles the art on this as opposed to Pete Woods, the regular series artist. Wes Abbott on letters. And Daniel Bayliss is handling his own color work as well. I'm really enjoying Titans from Layman. I love that we get what does Starfire call it as Nightwing is sort of describing this crime scene. Oh, are you boy wondering? I love it when you do that. And Nightwing,
Yeah.
makes a comment to the effect, well, when you're trained by the world's greatest detective, comes second nature or what have you. So yeah, this is continuing to be a really great series from Layman. Um, just leaning into the team feel, the family feel of Titans. Um, the Early on in the issue, we get some interaction between Deathstroke and Terra, which is really interesting because obviously they have history. Um, Terra was she was seduced, I guess is the word, by um, by Deathstroke, by Slade Wilson, and it's interesting because I don't think that storyline would ever get approved these days, because it's
Yeah.
it's
The
child
Janus
child
contract, right?
abuse. Yeah, yeah.
Janus
Uh,
directive.
he's whatever in his 30s and she's just a teenager, 13, 14 years old, whatever. Like, it's cringy when you think about it. Oh, back then, nobody really batted an eye. And it has become, a classic storyline. But we've talked before about how Layman is really doing a good job of sort of capturing that same feel, emotionality of the Wolfman Perez run. And Tara again, not only betrayed the Titans but was killed. Obviously, ensuing reboots or whatever, she's back. But the antagonism between the two is very apparent here. Also, shout out to Layman for mentioning the fact that Slade Wilson shot Garth in the eye, and then it just sort of went away and was ignored when the Tom Taylor series or run on Titan started. At least lip service here. He says how much he hates Slade because he basically shot him in the eye, almost killed him, and it was painful to regrow. So didn't know that he actually had that ability. I mean, he is a shape changer, so it's not
Yeah.
completely out of left field. But again, kudos to Layman for pulling at that thread and acknowledging it, and also using it as a springboard to what's to come, because there's, similar to the Terra Deathstroke dynamic, there's now a Gar Deathstroke dynamic where he's advocating, hey, everybody thought Slade Wilson was dead. Maybe it's okay if the guy we thought was dead is actually dead. So Gar out for some revenge. So that adds another dynamic as well, because he's a superhero, and Gar's usually very fun loving and easygoing. So for him to be advocating for somebody's death, it's a little bit out of character, but it adds some interesting dramatic tension. So the Daniel Bayliss art is okay. I don't enjoy it as much as the Pete Woods art, but like I said, he is coloring himself, and he gives us a kind of a bright palette, which kind of suits the nature of and the tone of Titans that Layman is giving us. And I'm just really impressed with what John Layman has done here. Yeah, I know that his storytelling and sense of humor is not always for everybody, um, but he's really nailing it on this Titans run. I'm really really enjoying it, and not just on his character work on the heroes, but also the villains. Like, he's given us an interesting Slade Wilson that feels accurate, that feels very true to the character. Same thing with Clock King. So, yeah, I'm very impressed with what he's doing. When they go to investigate this crime scene, as I said, basically it's a prison break with Slade Wilson and Tara and Clock King and Mammoth going there to they leave Psycho Pirate, and they leave this other character, Volcano Man, and they and I found that to be a little bit interesting as well, right? Like they take Killer Frost, which is funny because she's been most recently a hero. She's been on the Justice League a few different times, and then in the pages of Teen Titans recently, we saw her kind of go rogue, partly because Psycho Pirate was messing with her emotions. But here it's interesting. Like, supposedly Psycho Pirate is contained and he's not messing with her emotions anymore. But she's saying that she hated being a hero. I have no good memories of being a hero, which is interesting. It's like, was there something about the character, perhaps because they were using her in the CW shows, that they wanted to make her more of an anti-hero? We've talked before about the inherent problems with that.
Yeah.
I won't go so far as to say I like her better as a villain than a hero, because honestly, I don't think she's been fleshed out one way or the other enough to really say that she worked. She's kind of been a two-dimensional character, but
Yeah.
I do appreciate her showing up here. But more to my point about these three different villains that are there, they only break out Killer Frost. They leave Psycho Pirate because he's already failed them. They don't trust him. But the other character, Volcano Man, when he showed up, I mean, I don't even know. Is this his first appearance? Have we ever seen Volcano Man before? I meant to look it up and I
I don't
didn't.
remember. I don't remember a Volcano Man, but
Yeah.
who knows?
But when he showed up on that page there before they named him Volcano Man, I thought it was Brimstone, right? Who made his first appearance in Legends #1
Oh
from
yeah. Okay.
who was it? John Byrne and John Ostrander.
Sure. Sure.
Um,
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's who wrote Legend. I can't remember. John Byrne for sure. I'm trying to remember who the other creator was. But I don't know why it couldn't have been Brimstone. But it seems like this Volcano Man. Um, he's okay. He has shown it before, but he looks wildly different. Actually debuted in Challengers of the Unknown number 27 in August 1962. So,
Interesting.
uh, yeah, and they mention he's like this monster from underground, um, and yeah, he has volcano-based powers or what have you. So, again, I guess it's fine. I don't mind, callbacks to other characters, even if they're obscure. So shout outs to John Layman for that. But yeah, again, I just thought it was Brimstone, and they said Volcano Man. I was like, oh, Volcano Man, who the heck is that? So anyway, yeah, John Ostrander, Len Wein are the writers of Legends, and yeah, John Byrne on pencils. So those three are the co-creator of Brimstone. Um, so anyway, I don't know. Maybe there's another reason for Layman to use this guy instead of Brimstone, but regardless, my point still stands that with the exception of Volcano Man, who's just sort of this mindless underground creature that has, volcano-based powers, and so he doesn't really have intelligence per se, so he doesn't really have a personality. The rest of the villain personalities are handled very well by Layman. So it's not just that he's nailing the characterization on the heroes; he's also doing it on the villain side as well. So I think it's fair to say, and it's not like I've read every single thing that John Layman has ever written, but I think it's fair to say that this is my favorite thing. Like I'm enjoying this more than Chew, and that's probably because it's set in the DC universe, which I'm just a huge DC fan, obviously. And his Chew series, I recommend it if you've never read it. It is enjoyable, but it's more crime noir. It's not superhero work, but yeah, I'm just very impressed with what Layman's doing here. So, what are your thoughts on the issue?
Well, I like the reason why this made my top five. I put it in actually at number it's number four for me. Just because it reminds me, I just brought some good memories. This reminds me of the George Perez Marv Wolfman run, but yet it feels unique to itself. It feels like it's on its own. This is John Layman telling his own story. It's nice to see Deathstroke back. It's nice to see Terra back. Clearly, he's got his own machinations now. He's got his own agenda. We're not really sure what that is. I love Clock King. I love Killer Frost. I think Killer Frost is still. I think Killer Frost is lying. I think Killer Frost. She was manipulated by Psycho Pirate. I do think she's going to ultimately end up betraying Deathstroke. That would be my guess. I hope so. Anyway, I kind of liked when she was a good girl, or at least a bad girl pretending to be good. There's something sexy about that. Plus, she's a hot looking character, and I'm a Purian fanboy, unapologetic. And I have to say, I really love Donna Troy. The continuing relationship between will they or won't they, Donna Troy and Roy Harper continues in this issue. Clearly, they're a little uncomfortable around each other. They got to talk about their feelings for each other. I hope that John Layman explores. I still can't wait. At some point, Cheshire and Roy Harper have some. Are they or aren't they? And now Roy Harper, with Donna Troy, at some point Cheshire is going to find out. I think that's some drama waiting to happen in a triangle, waiting to become very pointed and explode. And so I'm looking forward to that. All these little things. I don't know where any of these storylines are going, but I'm enjoying the ride. I'm enjoying the journey, and that's what this is all about. So, yeah, I enjoyed this, and it's funny. Both Titans and Nightwing made my top five, and both of them were prior Tom Taylor stories, and I enjoy them now more with with new writers than I did with Tom Taylor. And I enjoyed aspects of Tom Taylor in both Titans and Nightwing, but now I'm glad they got new writers, new creative teams. That's good stuff.
Yeah, and speaking of Tom Taylor, he is the writer on our final book. It's Detective Comics number 1096. Mikkel Yanin handling the art. Mikkel Yanin gets some inking help over pages 1 through 11 by Norm Ratman, Wes Abbott on letters, Bruno Redondo, and Derek Chu give us some variant covers. So this is the end of Mercy of the Father. This is the finale, and it does a good job of both answering the questions that we've had throughout this run, going back to the Batman's earliest days, his origins, Joe Chill killing his parents and all that. So really interesting job. That's not the easiest thing to do. Writers don't always, I don't want to say they don't care, but I think sometimes they're so focused on wanting to tell the story that they want to tell, they're not that worried about messing with continuity a little bit. And what I love about what Tom Taylor has done here by going back and saying, hey, Thomas Wayne saved Joe Chill's life, before he was killed in that alley. And then that engendered questions for Batman. Was it a revenge killing or what have you? So Tom Taylor being able to go back and add in, be additive and flesh out the origin and flesh out Thomas Wayne as a character without contradicting anything or making anything not work, like that's not easy to do. And he did a fantastic job of that. The machinations and the motivations for the various characters, for Joe Chill's, the wife of Joe Chill's child, for Scarlet's child herself, these are emotional revelations for them. Her Scarlet finding out just how twisted her mother has become and her identity of Asima, all the harm that she's caused in the name of justice, and that's how she sees her. She tells Batman in the confrontation they have here, we should be on the same side. You should be wanting to do what I'm doing. Final solution. For this argument for Batman many times. That's not new material. Tom Taylor's just kind of sort of framing it in a new way and making it more personal to Batman than he ever has by linking it to his parents. I mean, if there's anybody that Batman would want to cross the line for, it would be Joe Chill, right? Like, hey, this is the guy that killed my parents. This is the one that, changed the whole trajectory of my life, took happiness from me, whatever way you want to put it. Like if Batman was ever going to cross the line, it would be to kill Joe Chill. And he's tempted here, which again, it brings in a relatability and a believability to Batman. And so, it's just a fantastic job. But the other part of this is this character that shows up at the end who we don't know who he is. He sort of looks like Blade from Marvel, right? Like he's wearing a red shirt. He's got like these red tinted glasses. He's African-American. He's got a goatee. His name is Ambrose, but we know he works for Elixir, but we never see Elixir. So who's this Ambrose? Who is Elixir? And how did Evelyn, Scarlet's mother, the Joe Chill's girlfriend from back in the day, how did she get involved with them? And Ambrose is just there. He's not there to rescue Evelyn. He's there to basically scold her, saying, you failed. You brought attention onto us that was preventable. You were supposed to protect Elixir. Instead, the whole Fountain of Youth program, or whatever you want to call it, where they were harvesting blood from these young incarcerated juveniles. Like that whole thing has blown up, the work that Scarlet was doing. It appears Scarlet's in the clear. She wasn't fully aware of what her mother was doing. And when she did find out, she tried to stop it. But yeah, Evelyn's not in the best place. They're like, you need to keep your mouth shut. And as long as your daughter keeps her mouth shut, we will leave her alone. But there's others in the city that need to be silenced. Obviously, he's, referencing Batman, because the other thing that Batman did was he went out and had Clark Kent write an expose saying, hey, this this procedure or protocol or whatever you want to call it that Bruce Wayne was using, like he sort of throws his Bruce Wayne persona under the bus, because he has Clark write this article saying, hey, this thing that he's been doing to help de-age him or whatever. And again, that's a great way for, like, in continuity to say, hey, Batman has had all this physical trauma over the years. Why is he still able to do, what he's doing? It's sort of this tangential thing that's happening. But anybody who wants to nitpick about that, people can point to this story and go, hey, well, he was sort of de-aged in that story that the Mercy of the Father story that Tom Taylor told. So I like that as well. That this protocol or what have you has been exposed, and Batman, again, Bruce Wayne is the mask at this point, right? Like we've talked about that a bunch of times. But again, just another really interesting part of the story for Tom Taylor. And maybe the thing that's most impressive about this first arc of his Detective Comics run, like I'm calling out all these little details or these little nuances that he added to the story. And when you add them all together, not only do you get a great story, but you get a story that feels like it's got a lot of meat on the bone. Like there's a lot of stuff packed in here, whether it be, hey, we know why Batman's still able to do what he does because of, this protocol that he took, the protocol itself, being able to call out Bruce Wayne, yeah, leveraging his relationship with Clark Kent as a reporter to expose this, going back and exploring the relationship of his father, the fact that his father in a way was responsible for saving the man who then ultimately killed him. So if his father hadn't saved him, his father would still be like there's so many little details and nuances, and that's just great storytelling. And when we look at Tom King's body of work, you and I have both said in the past,
Tom
it
Taylor, you
seems
mean
like
Tom Taylor?
Tom
You mean
Taylor. Yeah,
Tom
did I say
Taylor?
Tom King?
You
Yeah, I
said
meant
Tom
Tom.
Taylor.
Tom Taylor. Yeah, yeah. When we look at the story and the body of work that Tom Taylor has given us over the years, you and I have both said that we feel like when he writes stories that are out of continuity, it seems to land better, right? Whether that be his Dark Knights of Steel or his Deceased work or in his Injustice work, because in those stories, I feel like they're more reflective of this, where you get more nuance and you get just more jam packed in and little Easter eggs and call outs and what have you. I feel like if we really want to get nitpicky here and we look back at his Nightwing run, or we look back at his Teen Titans run, so many times we pointed to pacing that we thought that was the problem. But I think the other problem with those runs at times, most of the time for his Teen Titans run, which we did not care for as much as his Nightwing run. His Nightwing run was a little more up and down. But if I think back to the times when I wasn't really enjoying it, you know what was missing? This sort of real meaty story, like feeling like I'm getting a lot of. And we used to say the touchy feely stuff, the emotional stuff's always there, but
Yeah.
something's missing. And I feel like this is the answer. Like what this first arc gives us here in Detective Comics, with all this, where just every little plot thread, every little Easter egg, every little part of the story that ties in so well with other things. That's what was missing in his Nightwing run at times. That's what was missing in his Titans run most of the time. It wasn't as fully realized. So I, I thought this was fantastic. It's definitely in my top five. And the artwork. I mean, I've been a huge Mikel Janin fan since I can remember. I mean, his art's fantastic. I mentioned earlier that Tom King's first DC assignment was on Grayson. It was Mikel Janin's art on that. And that was like the first time that because he had been on Justice League Dark previous to that, but that Grayson run was really where I thought he leveled up, and he's a superstar in my mind. So his art here is just absolutely fantastic. So anyway, uh, this is in your top. No, did not make
No,
your
it's
top
not.
five. Yeah.
No, but
So give us your thoughts
it's
on
yeah, I know, but it probably is like it would be 6 or 7. But uh, I gotta say, I like the fact that is this might not be the last time we see Joe Chill. Tom Taylor is pretty good at coming back to utilizing these characters for more than just one arc. And as Scarlet tells Bruce Wayne in this issue, apparently this piece of shit, or this piece of whatever, is my father, and you know. Is she going to have a relationship with Joe Chill? Is Joe Chill going to have some kind of redemption? Probably not. But it's interesting because Thomas Wayne saved Joe Chill. Joe Chill ended up being the one that killed him and his wife. And one has to wonder is this going to come full circle? I have a sneaking suspicion this story that Tom Taylor has told, it's not over yet, and that a lot of these character arcs, in particular Joe Chill's character arc, and maybe even Scarlett's, that it's not over yet. It's not done. It wouldn't surprise me because I'm just looking. I'm thinking of his Nightwing run, where a lot of those characters stayed through his long run, and I like the character work here, and I like, Joe Chill is a character that DC's wisely, they've never overused Joe Chill. He's always been sort of the one, he's always the guy that took out the Waynes. But I wonder if Tom Taylor's going to be utilizing Joe Chill more in these storylines moving forward. Maybe he isn't, but it wouldn't surprise me. I love the character work. there's a lot of substance here. What I like about his Detective Comics run, as opposed to his Teen Titans and his Nightwing run, it already feels like it has more substance. It already feels that it has more gravitas, more that it's more interesting. It's pulled me in, and it's done so in far fewer issues. Because I felt like we were waiting forever to have movement in his Nightwing run, forever for some movement in his Titans run. This actually feels that there's a lot of substance. And of course, he's gifted with fantastic Mikel Janin's art, who manages to keep up. And I think this has been published on time too. So kudos to Mikel Janin, who can be sometimes a
Yeah.
little slow as an artist. But no, it's good stuff.
Yeah, I wonder if he'll have the next arc off. Because yeah, I mean his art is so detailed. I've never heard of him being late though. I think he's relatively fast, but he's also been doing his own color work, so that makes it take extra time as well. So anyway, that does it for the books we're going to talk about in detail. There are a few other single issues out this week. Let's see, we have DC crossover with Sonic the Hedgehog. Second issue of that is out. Batman Wayne Family Adventures number 160 over on Webtoon. Also, I mentioned at the top of the show, Superman Day is this Friday. So there are Superman Day 2025 versions of All-Star Superman Special Edition number 1. Also, Superman for All Seasons Special Edition number 1. And then Jimmy Olsen's Super Cyclopedia Special Edition number 1. As far as collections this week, there's only one that I saw. There is a couple of collections that are coming out on Superman Day. So there is a collected edition of All-Star Superman, also Superman Unchained, written by Scott Snyder with art by Jim Lee. But in terms of just the regular collections this week out on Wednesday, the only thing is Legion of Superheroes 5 Years Later Omnibus. So probably time to coincide with the return of the Legion soon. This is an omnibus with 1,424 pages, so it's absolutely huge.
Wow.
It collects Legion of Superheroes numbers 1 through 39, Timberwolf 1 through 5, Legion of Superheroes Annual 1 through 3, and Adventures of Superman 478. Now, this is the 5 years later Legion, where the Legion had gone away for a number of years, and then there was a time jump, and they came back 5 years later. This is Keith Giffen, kind of his mastermind. Jason Pearson handles a lot of the penciling on it when Giffen himself isn't doing that. So this is a beloved era of the Legion. I got to admit, it was not my favorite because it's a little more sort of grim and gritty, which makes sense considering, you know, this was a series that came out in the 90s. And it's going to be interesting to see. I don't think this is the version of the Legion that we're going to get when they return, but it is worth reading. It's again a little more grounded take on the Legion. So, all right. Well, I'm going to give my rankings because I don't know that I gave all of them when we were doing the rundown. So yeah, I had Catwoman at 75 at 11, Batman Superman World's Finest at 10. Number 9 for me was Challengers of the Unknown. Number 5. 8 was New Gods. Number 5. 7 was Wonder Woman. Number 20. 6 was Zatanna. Number 3. And then going to my top 5, I had Titans at 5. Nightwing at 4. And then I had Absolute Flash, Detective Comics, and the Superman Special as my top 3. And if I have to pick one, it's so tough. I feel like I could pick any of those 3. They're all worthy of being my pick of the week. And in my heart, I want to pick the Summer of Superman special because Superman's my favorite character. But when I went back through and I was kind of flipping and trying to decide between the 3, ultimately I went with Absolute Flash number 2, just for the freshness of it and the art and the color. I think it melded together really, really well. But yeah, I mean, Detective Comics easily could have been my pick. Summer of Superman easily could have been my pick as well. So yeah, I'm gonna go with Absolute Flash though. But you know, ask me tomorrow, I might pick something different. So anyway, what's your pick of the week?
Well, I'm probably going to stun you, but my top 5. I'll say coming in at number 5 for me, I never went above that. 5 was Zatanna, 4 was Titans, 3 was New Gods, 2 was Nightwing, and coming in at number 1.
Wow.
Coming in at number one, and by the way, the other, I mean, I like the other ones too, but coming in at number one because it really impressed me was Wonder Woman. I actually really enjoyed that. I really enjoyed that tale, and I'm really curious to see how it ends. And you know, I I'm no one's more surprised by that than me. So yeah, that's there you go.
I think Tom King's gonna need to retire now. He got you to pick a book, one of his books as book of the
Well,
week. I'm gonna send him a text right now. Say, dude,
yeah.
you've peaked. Rocky picked Wonder Woman. He finally enjoyed one of your issues of Wonder Woman. You
Well,
might
no,
want to just hang it
I've
up.
enjoyed more than one issue. I enjoyed his opening issue. There was a couple in there that I liked. But no,
He's got
I
to
would
go.
give
He's
him
got to
credit.
go out on top. It doesn't get
Yeah,
any
I
better.
got to give credit where credit's due. I enjoyed it. What can I say?
We'll see. We'll see if he can make it two in a row when we get the second part of the story coming
Yeah,
up. So. Anyway, that's going to do it for this episode, everybody. Thanks for joining as always. Don't forget, later this week, should have a bunch of indie spotlights out covering the last few weeks. Don't forget to check out the other Summer of Superman content that's over on the Comic Source. We really appreciate the support. If you're listening audio only, which, you got thousands and thousands of past episodes to go back and listen to, maybe you like to listen on the subway or while you're driving or working out or what have you, just go to wherever your favorite podcasts are. Do a search for the Comic Source and subscribe, whatever app or platform you prefer. But also don't forget to head over to the Comic Source YouTube channel and like, comment, subscribe, ring that notification bell over there as well. We really appreciate the support as always, and we'll talk to you next time.
catch you later.